Fear Not, Episode 106. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today you and I are going to be joined by Steve Scott. Welcome, Steve. How are you today?
I am doing really well. It's a nice rainy day in New Jersey, but it's kind of getting a lot of work done today.
Awesome. Are you ready to fear not today?
Absolutely.
Steve is a Wall Street Journal best-selling author with 70 books in his catalog, including his latest book, Habit Stacking. He also blogs about habit development on his site, developgoodhabits.com. Scott started DGH because he believes the only way to improve yourself is to set achievable goals and develop daily habits that will move you toward these outcomes. Steve, would you take a few extra moments to fill in the gaps and maybe also give us a brief glimpse of your personal life?
Sure. So, and actually, I'll probably talk a lot about this when we get into the questions about fear. But for many years, I've actually wanted to start an online business, and when I finally kind of gained the courage to begin it, I tackled a number of challenges, and I was able to structure a business where I pretty much could live moment to moment and travel the world and pretty much structure the life the way I want to live it. But recently I got married and I had a kid. So pretty much my life right now is down to habits and schedules and routines. So it's cool because I can sit at home and work when I want, but now I have a family to take care of. So it's definitely been an interesting development in the last year or so.
Steve, would you also share with us today one of the biggest fears you've had to face?
Probably the biggest fear I've ever had to face was starting the online business. So this was back in 2004. I knew I wanted to build something, but I didn't really know how to go about doing it. I had a website, but it really absolutely positively wasn't able to support me. But for some stupid reason, I decided that I wanted to just make a go of it. So honestly, I was scared out of my mind. I thought that what would happen if I failed? I would be living on the streets in poverty. I would have next to nothing. So pretty much what I was able to do to overcome it was just imagine the worst case scenario. So I asked myself, all right, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen if this business failed? And at the time I was single, I didn't have any dependents. I really didn't have all that. There was no kind of irrevocable action that I couldn't come back out from under. So I asked myself, what is the worst case scenario? And pretty much the answer to that was I would have to go out and get a job again. I would have to go start building up my career. And that kind of gave me the idea that, all right, even if this completely fails, I can always get a part-time job. I can always find ways to hustle and make a little bit of money on the side. And then from there, I was like, all right, what don't I need in my life? And I just realized I could live very simply. I could live in a house full of guys, which I did, pay rent about $400 a month and just pay for my groceries. And that's all I really needed to just survive. And from doing that, I was able to kind of spend those year or two building up the business. And I had a series of part-time jobs to support myself on the side. But the bottom line is I was scared out of my mind about starting a business. And I kind of just asked a simple question and realized that it wasn't as scary as it sounded.
Would you say that that's how you approach fear in general?
Yeah, and actually, that's pretty much every decision I make nowadays is you ask yourself, what is the worst case scenario? And, 9 times out of 10, the answer isn't as bad as you make it up to be in your mind. And I would say nowadays, I'm not sure I might have made the same decisions I did back in 2004 because of the wife and the kid, because I do have to help support the family. Obviously, my wife works, but I'm not too sure I would want to saddle her with supporting the entire family just on her salary. But pretty much in general, any type of decision I have to make, I sit down and ask myself, like, I'll almost just imagine what could possibly go wrong. And most of the time, it's really not that big of a deal.
You must have come across some interesting material that's helped you to deal with fear. Would you mind sharing some of those with us today?
Sure. Obviously, one of the best books on this, and that kind of talks about the what is the worst case scenario, is the 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And he has a whole section about really addressing your fears and just imagining what could possibly go wrong. And I would definitely, even if people have read the book before, I would forward to that or jump forward to that one chapter where he talks about just understanding what's going on in your head and really just addressing it straight on. Like, obviously, if you're scared about something, find out why you're scared and imagine what could possibly go wrong. And usually it's not that bad. I know I've already talked about that before. Another tool, I'm not too sure if it's necessarily a tool, it's more of a kind of state of mind or a framework, is to focus on removing negativities from your life. So if you know that you often get scared because you're reading stuff on social media or you have negative conversations with people, I would try to actively avoid any sort of like what I would call a negative trigger, anything that could make you get put in a state of mind that like, all right, what I'm about to do scares the hell out of me. So maybe just avoid those people. Like for me, I tend to really get upset and worked up if I read a pretty bad negative review of one of my books. So the simple solution to that was just stop reading my reviews, stop really truly caring about the like 5 to 10% who don't like my books and just focus on the people who do like my books. So it's more about just state of mind. It's just if you go through a day, even if you just keep a journal by you, go through the day and every time you have a negative thought or a fear, write down what was the preceding thought before that. And then, actually, a really good book on this is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And he talks about talks about triggers a lot and how if you understand what actually sets off a negative habit or a negative thought, if you start to kind of like structure your life so you don't even have those triggers in the first place, you'll start to feel a lot better in general. And I guess a final tool, actually two final tools, and these are actually tools, and it might not seem immediately applicable to fears, but the one tool I use all the time is a tool called Todoist, that's Todoist, and that's just basically an app that goes on your phone and on your laptop computer. And the reason I think it's good for overcoming fear that you can kind of keep yourself busy with checklists and routines and schedules of all that you have to do in a given day, you really just won't have time to worry about fear. And that's just kind of how I keep my I don't dwell too much in my head because I'm just busy doing stuff. And maybe at the end of the day, I might be a little scared about something that's a little bit like something where I'm putting myself out there and I'm not too sure how it's going to turn out. But for the most part, like the fact that I just keep myself busy all the time, I don't really have time to worry about stuff in general.
Are you ready for the speed run?
Absolutely.
What individual, whether they be fiction or real, has made the most impact on your life?
I'm going to give two answers, and it's probably an answer a lot of people give, but my dad and my mom. And I think my dad was someone who taught me the idea of like looking at the big picture in life and just not only embracing the idea that you should enjoy life and go out and traveling. And he kind of was big into surprising me in the morning during the summertime, saying, all right, we're going to go on a week-long trip. And he just wouldn't tell me where, and we'd go have fun together. And then my mom, for the kind of the importance of showing up, the fact that she was there pretty much every event possible that I had as a kid, and also the importance of daily effort. She was always someone who would grind away at projects, but she always did really well with projects because she just worked at it as a habit for a couple hours every single day. So I feel very blessed because I had two great parents, and I feel they really kind of shaped who I am right now.
If you could instantly change one thing in the world, what would you change?
That's a hard one to answer, but I feel a lot of the world's woes right now are just from basic like human greed and consumption, our constant need to upgrade our lives, whether it's the latest iPhone or the latest gadget or whatnot. I feel people should be more enjoyable or enjoy more about like the little things in life and what they already have instead of just constantly worrying about how they can like get the latest thing. So I guess this translates into a lot of our conflict in the world, a lot of the conflict that we see in the world that we're using so many resources. And I could actually go on a long rant about it, but I guess the one thing is just if we could just be at peace with what we have.
What's your biggest weakness?
My biggest weakness, I'm trying to think. Sometimes I get too, like I talked about the importance of having projects, but sometimes I get too involved with projects to actually just take a moment and pause and enjoy the moment. And that's something actually in the last year or so I've really been proactively just trying to work on. And I've actually gone as far as actually having a reminder every single day that pops up through the Todoist app that I mentioned before. Just at a moment, it's just a reminder says every day, be present. And I've learned now to just kind of put away my laptop. If I see my son playing on the ground, instead of just working on work, I put the laptop down and crawl down to the ground with him and play with him. Like I'm trying to just recognize those moments that probably won't be there in a few years and just enjoy them while they last.
What's your biggest strength?
I would say if I could I'm pretty good at taking any complex, long type of projects and just breaking them down into munchable chunks. So, for instance, writing a book or even building a website or anything that's massive, I'm able to take that concept and turn it into just daily actions. And whenever presented with anything that requires more than 2 steps, I like to take the David Allen getting things done approach and just, all right, just what's my next step, and just work at it and create a checklist and just work through the process.
If you could only have one book to read, what's that book going to be?
Only one book would be Replay by Ken Grimwood, and that's a fiction book that was written back in 1987, I think. But the quick version is it's a guy dies, he wakes up when he's 18 again. So I think in the book he's 43, which seems so old when I first read it. Now I'm pretty much reaching that age. But he basically gets to relive his life over and over, and each time he makes different decisions. So obviously the first time he lives his life again, he just makes a pile of money. And then along the way, he starts to realize what's important. He starts to almost like recognize the simple moments in life. And I feel it's a very good read, but it's also kind of a reminder of, at the end of the day, what's really important. Instead of just making a pile of money, it's, enjoy the people and the moments that you have in your life.
Do you have a favorite sound?
Favorite sound? For me, it's more a nature sound. So I like hiking a lot, so climbing up to a top of a mountain, just kind of sitting there and listening to the peaceful sounds of being at the top of a mountain, or even just beach sounds, but just in general sounds of nature.
And Steve, if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I would say just go to my blog, developgoodhabits.com, or actually, if you want to check out a book, habitstackingbook.com. Either one of those kind of can give you a perspective on what about and just the different types of habits that you can build.
And what parting advice would you like to leave with us today?
I would say that if someone has a lot of fear in general, I would say you should start to recognize and embrace your failures. And I think that's where a lot of fears come from, and I say they, but this is something I had to go through, that you get so worked up about something, but at the end of the day, the worst thing that happens, you can make a mistake. And honestly, it's been my experience that the mistakes are the most valuable lessons of all. So if you're afraid of starting something and you're afraid that you're going to make a mistake along the way, I would say just proactively go out and try to make mistakes, because you'll get a ton of wisdom just from all the little kind of missteps you have along the way.
That's excellent advice indeed, and thank you so much for that, Steve. And I want to say thank you, too, for coming on the show today. It was really cool talking to you. I appreciate you being generous with your time and your knowledge and just sharing with us today.
Well, thanks for having me on, Billy. That has been awesome.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.